Welcome to part 2 of complications of head and neck and ENT surgeries. So before that, you should have a basic idea of the global assessment of the patient. You should assess the patient as a whole, globally how the patient is looking like, about the fitness of the patient for surgery. Surgery is a task. If it is done for a fit patient, it comes into a proper outcome. If not, the patient goes into failure. Operation success, patient died. It goes like that. So to prevent that, you have to go for these things. So ASA, American Society of Anesthesiologists, and CPOD, that is Confidential Enquiry into Patient Outcome and Death, CPOD scores. We are going to see the two ASA score and CPOD grading. ASA, there are 5 totally here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus E. In ASA, E is the emergency case. And you have to do in emergency, there is no other option. Grade class 1, if you take completely healthy patient, like you are posting a fit patient for a tonsillectomy, is class 1. Class 2, mild systemic disease like diabetes and hypertension without any end organ damage. End organ damage is not there. It is a normal diabetes patient, normal hypertension patient. It comes under class 2. Class 3, they have a severe systemic disease. It is mild here, it is severe systemic disease. For example, angina and severe COPD, moderate to severe COPD, but not incapacitating. The patient is mobile. 3 is a middle via media. His patient is mobile, still mobile and not incapacitating. He is able to move. Whereas 4 is an incapacitating disease. The patient has got some problem, he cannot move with a constant threat to life. Okay, it's like a boundary. 4, advanced COPD and cardiac failure. So COPD and cardiac failure. COPD for lungs and cardiac failure. Should keep in mind it is 4th class of ASA. That is 4th class of ASA with a constant threat for life. Number 5 is a moribund patient. Morbid or moribund patient, he will not live for more than 24 hours with or without surgery. Whether you do surgery or you do not do surgery, patient will not live for more than 24 hours. Number 1 is ruptured aortic aneurysm and pulmonary embolism. These are the things that are possible. So ASA, please remember, at least you may not be able to remember deeply. There are 5 classes plus emergency. So emergency must, 5 is the moribund and 1 is normal. And CPOD scores. So confidential inquiry into patient outcome and death. CPOD is confidential inquiry. You are doing an inquiry into what? Patient outcome. How is he going to come out? Plus death, if there is any possibility of death. So confidential inquiry into patient outcome and death, CPOD. Wherein grade 4 is an emergency operation within 1 hour. So you have to go for immediate operation or resuscitation simultaneously with surgical treatment. A patient with a laryngeal cancer came with stridor and is also having a cardiac arrest at a time. So laryngeal cancer, you have to go for tracheostomy, and this resuscitation of CPR you have to do simultaneously. At a time you might have to do. This is what is called as emergency CPOD 4. 1 is an elective operation to suit both surgeon and patient. We know we are making an arrangement after 1 month, for example. After 1 month, for example, tympanoplasty. 2 is an operation within 24 hours. Delayed operation after resuscitation. So initially you have to go for CPR, resuscitation, and then within 1 day you have to go for surgery. 3 is an urgent one. 3 is an urgent one between 1 and 3 weeks. Remember, 3 for 3 weeks. But not life saving. So early surgery is preferred, but it is not life saving. 3 for 3 weeks within you can do. This is what is about CPOD. That is 4 is emergency. You have to do CPR and resuscitation, and you have to do surgery at a time. So previously what we have discussed is assessment of the patient. We have assessed the patient with this ASA and CPOD. ASA and CPOD. Whereas now we are going to see the performance status. How is the patient going to perform? Performance status. WHO performance scale? WHO performance scale. Performance scale, WHO performance scale has got 5 things, and Karnofsky's performance scale have got 10 things. So WHO 5 is it's starting from 0 to 4. 4 is completely disabled, cannot carry out any self-care, totally confined to bed or wheelchair. Totally confined to bed or wheelchair. The patient is totally confined to bed or wheelchair. So it is number 4, bed or wheelchair. So that is number 4, completely disabled, cannot carry out any self-care. 1 is restricted physical strenuous activity, but ambulatory and able to carry out light work. He is able to move, okay, but he is not able to run like this, okay, not able to run like this. He is able to move, not able to run like this, but able to carry out light work. For example, lifting a bucket and all, he is able to carry out. Next, first one is restricted. Number 2 is ambulatory and capable of all self-care but unable to carry out work. He cannot do work and about more than 50% of waking hours. So half of the time, for example, if you take 2 is half time divided. Half time he is sleeping and half time he is able to do the work. So this is 2. Half time he is sleeping and half time able to do for waking hours. Okay. 3 is capable of limited self-care. 3 is limited self-care, confined to bed more than 50% of waking hours. So if it is there, he can do the work, but most of the times he is on the bed. Can do the work and most of the times he is on the bed. So that is 3. 4 is disabled. As you could see, disabled on the bed only and on the wheelchair. Disabled on the bed and wheelchair. You can as simply as remember, 0 is able to carry out all the normal activity, he is able to stand, he is able to run, okay, he is able to run, etc., etc. 2 is he cannot run like that, but he can stand and do his own work. 3 is ambulatory, capable of self-care. If it's 2 is divided into, third one is the number 2, divided into half sleeping and half working. Third one, 3 is limited self-care, more than half sleeping and less than half is able to do his work. 4 is disabled completely on the bed and on the wheelchair. As simple as that. Karnofsky's performance scale. So there are 10 events in this. 10 is moribund, fatal, progressing rapidly. Moribund is just about to die. He is about to die. Moribund patient. 10 is moribund. 100 is normal, no complaints, no evidence of disease. 100 is normal, no complaints, no evidence of disease. So he is happy. So 100 is normal. So this 10 is moribund. He is about to pass away. 90 is able to carry out normal activity, minor symptoms of disease. So minor symptoms of disease, only very mild symptoms of disease is holding the chest, for example, like this, minor symptoms of disease. But we have to learn here from 40. 40 is disabled, requires special care and assistance. 40 is disabled, he is on the bed or he is on the wheelchair, for example. Okay, bed or on the wheelchair and he is requires some special care. 40 is disabled, 30 is severely disabled and he is in the hospital. Death is not imminent. So he is in the hospital care. So 30 is in the hospitalization but not imminent to die. 20 is very sick. 20 is very sick but hospitalization necessary. Active treatment is necessary. 20 hospitalization and active treatment is also necessary. 20 hospitalization and active treatment also necessary. 10 is moribund, as we have already seen. Disabled, severely disabled, very sick, moribund. 40 to 10 is very easy to remember. And whereas 100 is normal, as we have seen, 90 is able to carry the normal activity with minor symptoms of the disease. We have seen this one also. And 80 is activity with effort and some symptoms of disease. Activity with effort is with difficulty is able to move. Activity with some effort he is able to move. 70 is cares for self, unable to carry out normal activity. He can care for the self, but he is sitting and not doing any work, unable to carry out normal activity. 60 is it requires occasional assistance. 60 is occasional assistance and able to care for needs. So he needs someone's help. So he is sitting and then he wants someone help. Extra person is needed for 60. So you want extra person for 60. So take care. Caretakers are needed for 60. And 50 is considerable assistance is needed. So assistant is needed from 60 and 40. Disability is from 40. 60 to 50 assistance is needed. 40 to 10 is becoming more and more severe. So 50 required frequent medical care. So this is how you understand this Karnofsky's performance index. So we have seen that performance status by WHO performance scale and Karnofsky's performance index. Now coexisting medical conditions is the third thing we have to keep it in mind. So cardiovascular disease, you have to check for BP, pulse, ECG, echo, especially echocardiogram above 40 years. Echo, 2D echo is very important above 40 years. And respiratory disease, if you take this respiratory disease, chest x-ray, pulmonary function test, blood gas analysis, arterial blood gas analysis, you have to go for it. And endocrine disease, you have to go for thyroid function test, especially TSH, you have to go for many patients, and glucose, that blood glucose analysis for diabetes mellitus. Renal disease, you have to think of urea and electrolytes, blood urea, serum creatinine, and serum electrolytes, glomerular filtration rate. You have to go for serum electrolytes and glomerular filtration rates. Hematological disease, full blood count, blood film analysis, coagulation studies. Especially coagulation studies is very important. Coagulation studies is very important. CT, BT, PT, APTT, okay, and then INR, etc. All these things are very important for surgical patients. You have to know about this. Without this, you don't post for surgery. A successful operation will only remain so with optimal post-operative care. So pre-op, as we have done all those things, post-operative care also we have to take it. Whether this is in the ward, you can keep in the ward, number 2 high dependency unit or intensive care unit. All these things are very important. So general guidelines, they exist for the post-operative care. There are specific guidelines for that, and surgeons should be familiar with this part of good medical care. So surgery plus medical care leads to it for the proper healing of the patient. So what is optimal post-operative care? After surgery, what is that you are going to see? Number 1 is clinical assessment. Number 2, monitoring. Number 3, respiratory management. Number 4, cardiac management. Number 5, fluid and electrolyte management. Number 6, renal management. Number 7, sepsis management. Number 8, nutritional management. Very important, especially for people with laryngectomy, etc. So when you take the management, generally the mortality rate in head and neck are low. So management is taken into general management and specific management. So mortality is low, but medical complications are always important. Why? Because longer the hospital stay, increased mortality rates. The longer the hospital stay, increased mortality rates. Pre-existing comorbidities are also very important. You need a prompt management. First you have to identify that and manage it, and subsequent major surgical complications also you have to identify and manage it. So DVT, deep vein thrombosis, is very important for hospitalized patients. Why? Because it leads to thrombosis. Age over 60 years, very important. BMI and obesity greater than 30. Varicose veins, dehydration, previous venous thromboembolic phenomenon, thrombophilia, cancers, heart failures, MI or stroke, estrogen therapy, including hormone replacement therapy, you should keep it in mind, and high dose progesterone. Progesterones and estrogen, that is hormone replacement therapy, you have to keep it in mind. Pregnancy, you have to keep it in mind. Puerperium, you have to keep it in mind, because these are all high thrombotic phases. Okay. Next, immobility also leads to thrombosis. Inflammatory bowel disease also leads to thrombosis. Nephrotic syndrome also leads to thrombosis. This is about the DVT risk factors. After identification of this DVT risk factors, we have to go for DVT prophylaxis like TED stockings, pneumatic compressions, low molecular weight heparin preoperatively, like enoxaparin, etc. Preoperatively you have to think of it. According to NICE guidelines, screening of all patients who are admitted to hospital, a list of recognized risk factors are needed for venous thromboembolic events. Very important, keep in mind venous thromboembolism. Patient can be classified into low risk, medium risk and high risk for this venous thromboembolism. So they are based on number of risk factors that are present. a pulmonary embolism in head and neck surgery is as low as less than 1%. Of course, 1%. What is the chance for DVT in head and neck surgery is 1%. You should keep it in mind. So to diagnose this, what would you do? Ventilation perfusion scanning or D-dimer? Nowadays being done for corona also. Okay, D-dimer test. D-dimer is very important. D-dimer test for pulmonary thromboembolism. You have to go for D-dimer. The symptomatology of DVT and pulmonary embolism are notified here. So DVT, what are the symptoms? There can be a swelling of the leg or swelling of the vein, tenderness and pain in the leg, especially one leg. It occurs in standing and walking when you are having pain in the calf tenderness, especially calf tenderness. Squeezing the calf, it leads to pain. That is the DVT test you want to do. Feeling of increased warmth in the area because of inflammation, swollen or tender leg, redness or discoloration of the skin of the affected leg. So these are all the symptoms of DVT. And symptoms of pulmonary embolism. What are the symptoms of pulmonary embolism? As you could see, sudden unexplained shortness of breath. Shortness of breath is very important. Pleuritic chest pain is important. Hemoptysis is also important. And these are all the sudden symptoms that can come. So shortness of breath, chest pain and hemoptysis. And less specific symptoms like anxiety, dreadfulness, lightheadedness, fainting, rapid breathing, increased heart rate and sweating. So these are all can be the symptoms that are present in DVT and pulmonary embolism. Ischemic heart disease is common in patients with head and neck disease. Of course, ischemia of the heart is also very important. So preoperative optimization will minimize the risk. However, post-operative cardiac failure you have to keep in mind, and myocardial infarction may require treatment. Very important. Sometimes intraoperative MI also comes. It is commonly in surgical patients. MI occurs due to imbalance between, why is the MI coming? Because of myocardial oxygen supply and demand. So supply and demand is not met properly, and pre-existing coronary disease, coronary artery disease. Myocardial oxygen supply depends upon anemia and hypotension. So anemia is hemoglobin related, hypotension BP related. Whereas oxygen demand, so this is a supply related. So demand is increased in tachycardia and hypertension resulting from pain. So because of post-operative pain, there is tachycardia in patient, there is hypertension in patient, pain leads to hypertension. And withdrawal of anesthesia shifts the intravascular volume. So withdrawal of anesthesia is one of the important reason for this oxygen demand increase or shift in the intravascular volume. All the volume in the vessels, they shifts to the extravascular space. So this is how the supply and demand alter. Perioperative myocardial infarction occurs 1 to 4 days after surgery when the side effects of anesthesia have dissipated and perioperative pain, because of pain and fluid shifts are occurring. When is MI supposed to occur in the post-operative patients? 1 to 4 days. That is because of coming out from the anesthesia, number one, and increased pain and fluid shifts. Fluid is shifting to extravascular compartment, heart is not having proper blood supply. That is leading to this particular MI here. So these are the important complications that are related to heart in the case of post-operative patients. Thank you very much for watching ENT Student. Part 3 continues.